All right, boys and girls, welcome back to the drive-thru. Hungry? Stop by the deli. Get yourself a Black Forest ham and Swiss sandwich on a brioche bun with spicy mustard. And maybe some lettuce if I can find some. Okay, this is imaginary numbers, okay? Let's get to the point. That is the definition of I. I stands for the imaginary number. And it is the square root of -1. Okay? What is the need for imaginary numbers? It's for scenarios like this. Okay? If you put this in your graphing calculator, hold on a sec. Okay, so here I have it in my graphing calculator, and I graph it. And notice, it does not hit the x-axis, okay? Which means there are no real solutions, because nowhere does it hit 0. But now I just want to show you what would happen if I used the quadratic formula. Okay, x would be minus b minus 2 plus or minus big square root of b squared is 4 minus 4 times 1 times 20 is 80 all over 2. It's 2 plus or minus the square root of -76 all over 2. And you can simplify this, but I'm not going to simplify it. I just want to get to the point. Okay? Notice, what do we have here? We have a negative under the radical. And that's not allowable in math unless you're working with imaginary numbers. Now, what the heck are imaginary numbers used for? I can only tell you one thing, and that's fractals. And we're going to look at fractals tomorrow, and we're also going to relax tomorrow. Okay? We're going to just take a day to relax. But that's what imaginary numbers are used for. It's the only mathematical application I know for them, so I will show you. Okay? So that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with negatives underneath the radical. That's it. Now there's a little thing that you need to know, and you might need to write these down on all of your little quizzes. I to the first is just equal to I. Okay? Just trust me on that. These are notes. I squared equals -1. I'd like to go back a slide and show you. Does this make sense? Look at the definition of what I is. So what would happen if you squared both sides? The square root would be gone, and you get I squared as -1. Does that make sense? So that's where that comes from. I cubed, well, that's just I squared times I, right? So I cubed is -1 times I, so it's -I. And I to the fourth, well, that's I squared times I squared, correct? Which is -1 times -1. So I to the fourth is 1. Okay? That's facts you're going to need to know. So if they ever ask you, well, what's I to the 100th? Here's how you do that. You figure out, because you realize that once we would get to I to the 5th, it would just be I to the 4th times I to the 1st. Okay, right? But what's I to the 4th? It's just 1, so we don't even need that. So I to the 5th is the same thing as I to the 1st, and it just repeats like that. So I to the 100th, what you do is you do 100 divided by 4, and that gives you 25, remainder 0. Okay? So I to the 100th is the same thing as I to the 4th, because you have no remainder, and so I to the 100th equals 1. I don't even know if I'm going to ask you that on the test, but again, I am required to teach it to you. And now the rest of the video, we're going to do your worksheet. Okay? So I'm going to pause the video. Okay, so now let's take a look at some of these. Square root of negative 49. Well, that's the square root of 49 times the square root of negative 1. Okay? What's the square root of 49? What number times itself gives you 49? Come on, peeps. 7. So the answer to this is I times 7, but that's more popularly written as 7I. See where we got that? So for number 2 will be 12I. And number 3 will be I times radical 7. Because radical 7 cannot be simplified. Okay? Alright, next page. Okay, so these are a little weird. This is going to go into the fractals video that I'm going to show you. Okay, there's a million fractals videos, but when you graph these, this is called your real axis now, and this is called your imaginary axis. And so there's two ways to write this. So for number 7, consider this 0 minus 3I. So we don't go anywhere on the real axis because the real axis is 0. And then we go down 3. And then they ask for the absolute value. Well, the absolute value of anything is defined as that thing's distance from 0. So, how far is this point from 0? So the absolute value of negative 3I is 3. Now it gets more complicated, so we're going to have to use Pythagorean Theorem on the next one. Okay, so let's graph the next one. Right 6. Down 4 on the imaginary axis. This right here is 6 minus 4I plotted on the imaginary and real axis. Okay? How far is this thing from that thing? Alright, we're back to geometry for a second. How do we find the distance between this point and the origin? We get our Pythagorean. Make it into a right triangle. This is negative 4. This is 6. Find the hypotenuse. So, h squared is 6 squared plus negative 4 squared. H squared equals 36 plus 16. H squared is 52. So h is the square root of 52. Okay? And that's our answer. Alright, now, for the rest of this video, we will strictly be using our calculators. I don't think our scientific calculator has imaginary numbers, but our graphing calculator does. So, all you need to know is your I is the blue key above your decimal point. Can you find that for me? So you will literally just type it in. Negative 2, whoops, parentheses, negative 2 plus 3, I need to hit the blue key, I plus 5 minus 2I. Now, that one you can just do in your head. Notice, we just combine like terms. Negative 2 plus 5 is 3. 3I minus 2I is 1I. Okay? But you can also just use your calculator. So I'm not going to do 12 and 14, because those are very similar. But now in 16, you absolutely would want to use your calculator. Because when you FOIL this thing, you get 25 minus 15I. Let's see. Oh, actually, that one's not as bad. Plus 15I minus 9I squared. Those cancel. I squared is a negative 1. You end up getting 25 plus 9 is 34. So you could do that one in your head, but there's no reason to. I don't think. Let's just get good at using our calculator. 5 minus 3I times 5 plus 3I. And notice it gives you 34. Okay? Now, in number 20, I don't think your calculator will take this, because it won't accept a negative under the radical. So you have to change this to 6 minus 4I. Do you see how I got 4I for that? Plus negative 4 plus 5I. And put that in your calculator. 22 is similar. Okay? So that should give you enough base information to do the majority of this worksheet. Please just ask me for help when you need it. Boom!